Namaskar, students. I'm very happy today to start the English series of my lectures. There's been a growing demand from many students that these lectures I'm doing in Marathi for the sake of the Marathi students. I should be able to do it even for the English students and give the lectures in English as well. So today I'll be starting with the very first topic, though I call it lecture 2 because our lecture 1 in the Marathi series was a general introduction without any, I was generally talking about international relations. Let me thank all my students for the wonderful feedback they have given me, and I'm dedicating it to the students, and as a teacher I would love to give my best in a subject that has been my very own. So today we are talking about international relations. The question is, this is an introduction to approaches and how to think theoretically. Now, what are the foundational questions on which international relations is founded? The basic thing is, after the two major wars, especially the First World War, in the 20th century saw many statesmen and thinkers think, what is the reason that human beings are ready to kill each other in such large numbers? So the first question usually all theoreticians have tried to address is, how can human nature be characterized? So if you see in international relations, especially the traditional schools, this has been a major idea that pervades all theoretical thinking. The second question is, what is the relationship between the individual and society? Is it natural or was it done through some conscious process? So most of you know how the social contractualists tell you that the relation between the individual and the society and the state was done in a contract. Right? Most of you have read Hobbes, Locke and Rousseau. The next is, what are the characteristics in the role of the state? See, please understand, in international relations, the state is a very major actor. Whether you look at the realists who are state-centric theorists, or whether you look at the liberals and other schools who say the state is a major actor, but there are other non-state actors as well. So we will be going into each of them in greater detail when we take those topics. The fourth question is, how is the international system organized? See, the main thing of the neorealists, especially Kenneth Waltz, who has a very great influence on international relations, teaching and writing in India and other places, clearly meant that it is the structure of the system. The structure is anarchy. Anarchy means what? There is no central government like you have in a state where you can impose your will. Meaning you have police, you have the army, which you can do within a state. But in the international system, nobody listens to anybody. It's the law of the jungle, or might is right. So in such a system, how do you bring about order? So they have given different ideas, different schools. Let's look at them. How to think theoretically of seemingly disconnected events. There are several events that are taking place internationally every day. That is why international relations is a very dynamic subject. See, what I taught last year, I can't be teaching the same this year because I will have to take into cognizance what the world, like for example, the issue of COVID-19. Look at the way it has totally destabilized economies. It has destabilized daily lives. It didn't take any visa or come in. It is truly a globalizing effect. Meaning, if globalization we want to use, it is COVID-19. So please remember, such events, how are we going to theorize them, or how are we going to look at them from international or global governance perceptions? Right? Now, what are the developing answers? How do theories have come in. So political scientists develop theories as frameworks, right? And that is what we're going to study, both to understand the causes of events that occur every day in the world and to answer, right? So most of you know IR theories are idealism, utopianism, liberalism, and neoliberalism. And then you have realism, which is the dominant theory of international relations. You have classical, neoclassical, and neorealists. Then we have the international society theorists. That is what we also call the English school. Two major British thinkers, Martin White and Hedley Bull. They basically talk about order and justice in the international system. Then you have radical theories, or what we call the Marxist theories or the political economy theories. Please understand, in today's international relations, economics is extremely important. Why? So in economics, both these things, why? Because what power is to politics, money is to economics. And power and money go hand in hand. So we cannot separate and put them into compartments to understand reality, because reality overlaps. Then we have the Marxist, Leninist, neo-Marxist, critical theory, and Gramsciism as well. Scientific theories, the systems approach, decision-making approach, we can even add the game theory to it. Then we have what is called the post-positivist school, which has social constructivism, post-structuralism, feminism, post-colonialism, and foreign policy theories. Now, how did international relations theories develop basically? The historical context, meaning history, is a major source for international relations. There's always a proverb, if you don't learn from history, you're condemned to repeat it. And that happens most of the time. And here the historical context, we are looking at the development and change of sovereign statehood. How did the state, modern state that we have today, nation state, how did it come into being? And how have thinkers added certain ideas to it? Next is a theoretical discussion between international relations scholars, the major debates. What are the major debates that is going on in international relations? And please remember, international relations is an interdisciplinary subject, meaning it does not only take from political science. It takes from philosophy, history, law, economics. And you have the behavioralism and post-behavioralism, which also takes from scientific theories like engineering, physics, biology, and others. So it's really interdisciplinary. Now, what are the IR values and theory? Meaning, please understand that international relations talks about a lot of values which come into theoretical discussion. What is the first major value that it talks about? Security. All human beings have a state for have security and the rule of law. In the same time, in the international system also, states want to be secure. See, we don't want every day a war on our borders with China or with Pakistan. But if they do it, we can't keep quiet. So power politics, conflict, war, realism constants usually looks at this. All the realist schools, what we put under their umbrella. This has been the dominant school of international relations and very influential. Second, the concept of freedom. See, all human beings have aspired to be free. And here, the whole concept that human beings tend to cooperate. Peace, progress. This is usually liberalism deals with these type of ideas. Order and justice. Shared interests, rules and institutions, the international society, here this. Then welfare, wealth, poverty, equality, inequality, hunger. This comes from the IPE theories. And then the school of the value-free theories, that is an attempt to make international relations or the social sciences more scientific. And you have the scientific theories, like I told you, the systems, the game theory, the decision-making theory, and all this. Now, what is the modern state system? Please understand, there is a traditional view at the way we look at the state. The state and the system of states, they're basically territory-based. They are social, political, legal organizations which exist primarily to establish and maintain basic social, political, economic conditions and national values, particularly what? Culture and civilization. Indian civilization, Chinese civilization, the Western civilization, security. The state security is very important. That's why all of us have military forces. Freedom. We want to be free. Order. We want order in the international system as in also within the state. And justice. Everybody is equal before the law. And welfare. That we have a more inclusive idea of development, of growth and others. Please understand here what we are trying to separate is the idea of the nation is a cultural concept, whereas the idea of a state is a politico-legal concept. Now, what is the alternate view? There is you see, for every view there is always an alternative view. The alternate view is that states and state systems create more problems than they solve. Many people say that states are formed very arbitrarily. There are many nations within a state. After decolonization simply made arbitrary boundaries, like between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Most of you know that the Pathans are divided between Pakistan and Afghanistan, which has created a lot of problems. Most conflicts have arisen because of that. Or the Kurdish, the Kurds, they are divided between Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. And in Turkey, they are, literally there is a genocide against them. Though all of them are Muslims. Then you have the concept of this failed states, where states like Somalia, like Sudan, and failing rogue states, states that use terrorism as an instrument of foreign policy, very much like Iran or Pakistan. Predatory states, states that kill its own citizens, then a garrison state. Then you have the rise of fascist, very extreme ideologies. Maybe I hope to talk about Hannah Arendt sometime, but here, like Nazism, where you are ready to scapegoat and kill a community, and where the human nature can be at its worst. Then you have fascism, totalitarianism. This in Europe, which was thought to be the most industrialized, the most civilized, the most educated between 1919 and 1939. So they say, has the state really solved any issues? And they say majority of the people suffer. So there are the alternative view which says that there can be a state terrorism as well. Now the city-states, how did the states evolve? If we see city-states, you had the Mahajanapadas in India, which were 16. And I think there has to be a lot of Indo-centric teaching of international relations when we teach. Then the Greek city-state systems, Hellas, and in 200 BC to 500 AD, you had the Roman Empire, you also had the Indian empires. Please understand, like the Cholas, they had a very wonderful system of the way they conquered, and meaning not really conquered, but it was more a cultural and a trading type of a conquest. The Raja Chola, Rajendra Chola, you must read it, it's wonderful. If at all there is influence today in Southeast Asia of Hinduism and Buddhism, the credit should go to the Cholas. Please remember Japanese and Tamil have a lot of words that are similar. And Chinese, the Egyptian, the pharaohs, what a wonderful civilization they were. The way they could, keep human bodies without deteriorating. All this shows that they were scientifically far advanced than most of us. Then 306 to 1453. Or even you take the Cholas, the building of the Brihadishwara temple, if most of you see the architecture, how could they lift such huge stones to such high levels without many of the technologies of today? Then you have the coming in of Christianity, especially Orthodox Christianity, the Byzantine Empire in Constantinople. Please understand, Constantinople is modern Istanbul. The museum which Kemal Pasha Ataturk made, it was originally a church which later they was converted into a mosque, and then Kemal Pasha decided not to get into religious controversies and make it into a museum. Unfortunately, the present ruler of Turkey has issued an order to make it back into a mosque. This type of radicalization is bad because we deny history. 500 to 1500, you see Catholic Christendom, where the Pope in Rome becomes very powerful. You have Machiavelli's The Prince, which talks about it, and the whole issue of the separation of the church from the state is a major paradigm shift in international relations and political science. 1299 to 1923, you have the major powers of Europe who in 1815 became the Ottoman Empire, who also is called the Old Man of Europe, the Russian Empire, the Prussian meaning Germans, Austro-Hungarian, the French and the British. Now, usually in international relations, where do we go to when we talk about the rise of the modern nation state? To Magna Carta. Most of you must have heard, what is the Magna Carta? It was issued by King John of England, 1199 to 1216, basically as a political solution to a political crisis that occurred in 1215 AD. The Great Charter established for the first time the principle that everybody, including the king, was subject to the law of the land, which is extremely important. Most of you might ask, what is it so big? Please understand, under the divine right of kings, the king was never a subject to the law. Here they bring it, which is a huge step indeed. Demands were put by the barons, which benefited the landowners. And please remember, this was it had 63 articles in it. Now, what was this medieval authority? There is no sovereignty. This whole concept of sovereignty comes in only with the modern state. The Pope, the Archbishop, then you had the Bishop, the Priest and Peter on one side, because you had the Pope was very powerful. He did interfere. Most of you know the issue of Henry VIII. The Pope didn't give him permission to marry a second wife. So at the time he walked out of the church. And basically this divide in Christianity, most of you know, comes from Martin Luther. Then you have emperor, the king, baron, knight and people. So medieval era, if you see, how would we analyze the medieval? There was total disorder, conflict and violence. Because there was no delineated territorial political organization in control. Each could overlap into the other. Now, when does the modern nation state really come into being? Because of this overlapping loyalties, please remember people fought on the basis of identity and religion. You have the so-called 30-year war from 1618 to 1648. It began as a religious civil war between the Protestants and Roman Catholics in Germany that engaged the Austrian Habsburgs and the German princes. The Austrian were Catholic, the Germans were Most of them were Protestants. So Europe was fighting its first continental war. It became a war that spread throughout the continent. So this brought about a change in the balance of power in Europe. And because of this, France becomes a major European power and the power of the German princes increase. So you have two groups that rise victorious. Please remember, any war makes a paradigm shift in the existing power. So war is an instrument of foreign policy, as told by Clausewitz. Karl von Clausewitz, the greatest philosopher on war, calls war as foreign policy by other means. Now you have the Treaty of Westphalia. Many of us in international relations accept that this is the, watershed where we would peg the modern nation state. First, what is it? It is legitimized as a commonwealth of states. It marked the triumph of the states in control of its internal affairs and to act independently externally. Some of the things that today's state has, and stated many of the rules and political principles of the new society of states. And it became the first fundamental and comprehensive charter for all European powers at that time. So if most of us see, in this first lecture, I have tried to introduce the reason and the issues international relations tries to answer. It is extremely important for us to understand this area of study so that in the next lecture we can go further. Right? Thank you so much. See you at the next lecture.